The really frustrating thing about this footage was just supposed to be B-roll.
Hi, this is Brad with Copper Creek Cuts, a lawn care company in Northeast Florida. So you may remember seeing this property. I went and did a cleanup on some hunting land. I want to say it was like 10 acres, and we ended up cutting somewhere between 1 and 2 acres of trails. All the stuff you see me going through right now, I had previously cut. And the issue is, I'm going to take most of the blame on this one. What I had agreed on with the client was, in my mind, a truck width to pass through on a lot of this property, and then clearing some shooting lanes. But I still didn't nail it down more specific than that, and I should have. So what happened was I went out and spent, I don't know, it might have been a 5-hour day as far as, on site, doing all this brush hogging and clearing. And the client went out, I think, later that day. He doesn't live at this property. It's a hunting property. So he went out later that day and said, well, there's a couple areas if you could do more of. So that was kind of my first lesson, was if there is brush clearing to be done, you got to do a walkthrough with the client that day. I know that's not practical in every instance, so I'm not saying you have to do that every single time. But if you don't, you've got to realize what I found out, that there's the chance that they say, well, I'd like this done a little bit more, and they change the scope of work a little bit. If you're not there anymore, you've got to now figure out another day to come drive out. I was a little frustrated at myself because I had left some things ambiguous. I had to drive another 30 or 40 minutes one way, on a day that I hadn't planned on doing this work, and clear out these trails a little bit more. At the end of the day, that's my fault as the business owner for not making things clear. And there were some instances where, a truck width, that's not really a number, right? So he might have meant a truck width plus I can open up my doors on either side and get out. Everything was going, well, as fine as could be for rework, until, of course, I got to this section, and then that's when this happened. So obviously that's not a good noise. That's not a noise you want to hear. Now, I knew there was a lot of rubbish on this property. He had told me about some. I had found some during that first day of work. So there were some of the areas he wanted me to open up more as rework that I said, look, I'll do my best, but there's a lot of trash in here. So some of this stuff I'm just not going to be able to get. So now I'm even more mad at myself because I've gone into an area where I knew there was trash. I said, look, they even lost a mower blade here. Until I looked at it a little closer and realized,
I think that is one of my blades. All right, let's flip it and see the damage. Yeah, so I sheared that puppy right off. I think I must have ground right up against it there. Well, the question I know you've all been dying to know, how does the Ventrac cut with 2 blades? We're gonna find out, because I don't have the equipment to fix this here.
Now, speaking from the future, I can tell you that I didn't actually need tools to fix that. So if you've never sheared a bolt off of like a mowing spindle, you don't need tools to get it out. As long as you can grip a little bit of it with a pair of pliers, you can just twist it out by hand. There's no force that's holding it in, and that was a foreign concept to me. This is one of those you don't know what you don't know things. So in all my experience of fasteners that have had heads broken off, that has been nails and that has been screws. And both of those things still have a tremendous amount of holding force while the head is broken off, right? So you've got to get pliers, you've got a wrench on them. When I saw what I had done, I said, well, that's it. I've got to drill this thing out, and I don't have, my extractor set. That's all at home. But what I learned after is that you really don't need that. Worst case, you need like a screwdriver and a hammer, and you can kind of back it out by chiseling it. If it was completely flat and there wasn't anything left to grab, maybe you would have needed, some kind of a drill just to get it started. But then you could have done it by hand. But you might even been able to just twist it with your thumb. And again, that was a foreign concept to me because I had never worked with a bolt that had sheared off, but there's just nothing holding it in. That was a nice learning experience for me. So that's one thing that made me a little bit mad was, here I'm on a day I'm not supposed to be working, wasted an hour of drive time plus an hour to clean up whatever. I went into an area where I knew there was trash to try and make the client happy. I've ended up destroying my machine, which I didn't destroy it at all. I lost a $2 bolt. So looking back, it wasn't that big a deal. During the heat of the moment, man, that's when you question your life decisions that have led you up to this point. Like, why did I ever think this would be a good career to go into? And, all the kind of negative thoughts that you're just sitting on with the mower. So now with the middle blade gone, what I found is that it still kind of cuts okay. No, that's a lie. It doesn't, like the blade still cuts, but the issue is with the middle blade gone, I'm only cutting now with the left-hand blade, but I can't cut with a full blade width because what happens is that blade is kicking stuff off to the side. Normally there would be a second blade to catch what kicks over, and there wasn't. There was just an empty space. So if I was trying to take a full blade width, I was missing. There was a lot of stragglers because that full blade width wasn't being cut. So then I had to go down to like half of a blade width. So I was cutting with like approximately 1/6 of the cutting deck when I was doing the long passes. Going in and out like this, that was a little bit better because now I did have two blades that were working for whatever cut widths they could. So as I was moving over, it was still a painfully slow process, but I was getting it done. And so that was the other moral of the story that I found, that some days you're going to have these days that just, they're terrible. They suck, and you're like, why did I think it would be a good idea to go in business with myself? This is the worst thing. Now, first of all, compared to a lot of other people in the world, the worst thing you can say about your day is you broke a bolt off of a $40,000 piece of machine and your job took 2 hours instead of 1, you're living a pretty charmed existence, right? So I try and remind myself of that as much as possible, that the things that I think are a big deal, in the grand scheme of things, they really aren't. Yes, they're annoying. Yes, they're frustrating. It's okay to feel that way, but it shouldn't be something that you dwell on much more than, and again, that's going to be difficult depending on your mood and the kind of person you are, but those are the things I tell myself while I'm going through this to try and pull myself out of the funk. What you're seeing me clear out here, this is something that I didn't appreciate because I'm not a hunter. I don't have anything against hunting. I enjoy eating the products that come from hunting from some of the people I know that partake in that sport or that activity. But one of the things he wanted was a clearing lane cleared out. A shooting lane, sorry. A clearing lane cleared out. That makes a lot of sense. He wanted a shooting lane cleared out. That tree stand that you saw that looked like it was tilting over and should be condemned, they use that. It's still usable. It just looks pretty rough. From that spot, there were a couple more areas that, since I'm not a hunter, I didn't know you'd need an angle on. And so he sent me some pictures and said I need these areas cleared out too. So that's where, when I left it as ambiguous as I'll clear, a spot for a shooting lane, I shouldn't have done that. I should have pulled up some satellite photography and said, this is the area I'm planning on clearing, marked it with Microsoft Paint and sent it in an email or something and said, does that look good? Is that what you want? And gotten an okay from there. Because when I just say things like, I'm going to clear a truck width around so you can drive around the whole property, and I'll clear out a shooting lane, those don't have any numbers, right? That can mean completely different things to completely different people. So I really opened myself up to having to do this rework. It was entirely my fault. And it wasn't the fault of the client. So overall, I got the job done and the client was happy. I made a lot less per hour than I wanted to because I had another, I think I was another hour of drive time to get here and back on this day of rework. I want to say I was there maybe an hour or two during the rework. And that includes moving the camera. That includes figuring out what in the world happened, what did I just run over. It includes me feeling sorry for myself for 5 or 10 minutes where I just sit on the tractor and have a good cry. I didn't really cry. I cried on the inside for sure, but I was able to hold back the tears in real life. But at the end of the day, it taught me a lot of things, which is never a bad thing. If you have more information than when you started, I think that's, you got to call that a win, because if you just focus on the negatives, my goodness, you're never going to be happy in life. Anyways, that was one of the more difficult days I've had on the Ventrac so far during my year and a half, 2 years of ownership. I'm sure it won't be the last one, but follow along and I'll keep you informed on all of them as they come.